Today I'm joined by Brandon Gell of Every, the AI-focused multimodal media company, product studio, and consultancy that just raised money from backers like Reid Hoffman, the founder of LinkedIn. Brandon leads Every's studio and consulting business and has helped build one of the fastest growing AI consulting businesses out there, growing to seven figures in under a year by doing something most firms don't, building first and consulting second. In this conversation, we'll unpack how they work, share an example from how Every helped a $40 billion private equity firm use AI to transform their front and back office operations from compliance and legal to the investment process, saving hundreds of hours and millions of dollars. Brandon, welcome to Just Curious.
Thank you so much, Stu. Great to be here.
Yeah, good to have you. Let's start at the beginning. What problem did this private equity firm bring to you and Every?
Yeah, this private equity firm is really similar to a lot of our clients, where they came to us and said, "We know we need to use AI. We made a committee to figure it out 6 months ago, and that committee has gotten nowhere, and nobody's using AI. And we've realized that we need help doing that." This conversation started there. A lot of conversations start there because people, of course, don't immediately go to consultants. They try to do it themselves, as they should. And then, we had, our initial conversation to understand what their challenges are and to try to shape a project that solves their problems. But a lot of the initial conversation is actually us helping them understand what their problems even are, which 90% of the time are cultural challenges of
Yeah.
people, needing to figure out how to make a culture of adopting AI and using AI, which is, probably the hardest thing to do.
Right. And so you start by helping them understand what problems they have, and what does that process look like?
So sometimes that means looking at data. A lot of our clients will already have a ChatGPT or a Claude, team or enterprise subscription. So sometimes we'll look at the data to understand how many people are actually using it. Sometimes that's a survey to ask people are you using it? Why haven't you used it? What are you using it for? But this initial conversation is really getting them to understand that it's not a tool problem, because a lot of people are stuck on, there's so many different tools, and which tools come out. Different tools come out every few months, and they're sort of paralyzed by tool choice. It's helping them understand, forget about the tool, get these three things, depending on the type of company they are, get these three tools, forget about everything else, and let's focus on cultural adoption and education. So the first conversation that we have with really anybody is really about beating the drum that they're overcomplicating their adoption, because the main thing, if they could solve one problem, it's just culturally get your team excited about this.
Right.
So the first conversation, that's usually what our first conversation is with a client, and it was the same for this PE firm.
Yeah. So one of the issues with the private equity firm is they just have low adoption. They also imagine that there are a lot of places within their organization that improved adoption and understanding could bring efficiency. And so how do you go from that initial conversation, which is suggesting that we need to make this easier for people to use? We need you to stop worrying about all the different tools. Let's focus on one and start using it. How do you go from there to identifying areas in whether it's compliance or legal or the investment process where this tool and this new approach can be applied?
Yeah. So typically our projects, and it was the same for this firm, we'll have an initial phase where we do research. And our research is super hands-on. We basically go into a firm and we say, we want to talk with a cross-section of every department, from analyst to partner. So we will interview typically 30 to 40% of a team and understand all of the different use cases that they have. And when I say use case, I don't mean tell us how you want to use AI. What I mean is just tell us what you do. Tell us what you do day to day, and we are going to identify what parts of your day are taking up most of your time, and or could be significantly like made more efficient or improve the outcome using AI. So we collect in this initial phase all of these different use cases. And that allows us to understand where the biggest impacts are going to be and how we should then go about doing our trainings.
Gotcha.
So that's like typically how these projects start.
And so you're having, you mentioned conversations with like 30 to 40% of the team. Are you looking to get, in this case, a representation of every part of the business? We mentioned a bunch of different areas, but you're looking really to talk to everyone in the organization and understand, like, what do they do every day? Where are there
Yeah. I mean,
potentially some replicable tasks or, areas that are made more efficient by some of the tools that you've identified?
yeah. At this firm, it was everyone from the EAs to partners to the resource group. It was every single department. Some companies want to start with individual departments, and I think that that's fine, especially if you're a little bit more skeptical. And others have done enough experimentation but haven't seen enough adoption that they just want to go all in, and they see that it can benefit every team. So, in this specific firm, though, it was all out across all different departments
Yeah.
at every level.
And so you collect
Which is
this.
important because it's just one last thing. It's important to do that at every level because a partner at a P firm is doing much different type of work. They're doing like really, really high level research and decision making. And when I say research, I mean like not on an individual deal, but like on a market. They need to have good taste versus an analyst or an associate is doing hard numbers based research and memo generation. They're creating a lot of the content that then partners ingest. So within an individual department, you actually have people that are doing all different types of work. So that's why it's important to get a cross section of an entire team.
Yeah. And so what are some of the things that came out of that process? What are some of the problems or areas of opportunity that kind of bubbled to the surface as you were having all those conversations?
Yeah. So I feel like we're trying to understand what are the challenges to a department adopting AI and what are the opportunities. So at a PE firm, I think of all the projects that we've done, PE is like one of the greatest opportunities for AI to augment work because it's mostly just knowledge work. And some of it is really rote knowledge work, like what the associate is doing. But it's repetitive knowledge work that you're applying to just every deal that you're looking at. So some examples of the work that we have done for this firm are creating toolings, creating prompts in GPTs to generate deal memos,
Mm.
creating deep research prompts so that in a specific category, an associate's able to like really, really thoroughly understand this market much faster. Creating prompts to from the research that exists, create action plans. So an associate or a partner or a mid-level person can understand where are the gaps in me understanding this deal or this market, and then they can go do that research themselves. That's more on the investment team side. On the um, on the legal and compliance side, there's a ton of stuff. Creating prompts and GPTs to mark contracts to market. PE firms deal with a lot of contracts across all of their different deals, taking information from PDFs and putting them into a table. One of the most successful GPTs that we created for this firm was the compliance GPT. So you have an entire team whose job is to process information that's going to be sent outside of the firm. And these are people that understand the rules of compliance and are looking at individual pieces of content. We created a compliance GPT so that anybody could just use this GPT, put the piece of content in, and get feedback exactly like they would from the compliance team themselves to edit that content themselves so it was able to be shared. And then obviously the compliance team can go do more like strategic work now. So we create in a project like this, we end up creating 20 to 30 products.
Mm.
Those products are in the form of GPTs and prompts, but they're products. They do real work and have real outputs. And we collect all of those prompts and GPTs into a library that we give to the team and the team can share and improve on. And that there's a really healthy balance there of like educating people, giving them real product, meaning the prompts and GPTs. And then the last piece of the equation that we usually do is we will give our clients free access to every. So we want to surround these individuals with what is going on in AI so that they really understand how quickly this space is moving, and they can read about it in a way that's entertaining and not just and applicable to their work, not just sort of like ingesting the latest news. So this combination of training, prompt, product development, and then cultural adoption by giving them every is a really nice way for people to culturally adopt AI, but then also have the know-how to actually apply it.
Gotcha. How is this process informed by your work as a studio and as a product builder? I touched on this in the intro. You all are unique in that, you're not just consultants, you are builders first. You obviously had a startup yourself. Every is, a startup, a media company. How is your approach informed by being builders?
Yeah, I mean, we are constantly pushing the boundaries of what this technology can do. And when I say this technology, I mean like the latest technology that's coming out on a weekly basis. We are, we kind of think about ourselves as explorers. The firms, the research, companies that put these models out, they have a sense for their capabilities, but not what people are going to do with them. So we are constantly understanding what can Claude 4 Opus do, what can VO3 do, what is O3 really good at versus 4.1, 4.5. So we just intimately understand these things. And that means when we have a client come to us and say, I'm doing this type of work, how can I do this? We have there's a level of understanding that we have that's not just, oh, we'll write this great prompt for you. It's we'll write this great prompt for you, and your team should always be using 4.5, or this department should always be using 4.5. It will result in a 50% better output. So we just have like a intrinsic understanding of how this technology works because we have to in order for our products to work really well.
Yeah. Yeah. And I guess
And
like at the same,
we're not
yeah.
learning about this stuff because we want to perform well with our consulting projects. We are learning about it because we as a business rely on knowing them really well. And then we,
Yeah.
as a result, also can share this with our clients.
Yeah. Yeah. And also, I guess as a studio who are building products like Sparkle and others, you are also looking for problems to solve, your own problems to solve with this technology. And so you have that sort of, I guess, philosophical approach to building that it starts with a problem more so than a solution.
Yes. I mean, I just feel like philosophically, we have a very strong perspective on all of this and how to build product and how to run a company and how to run a company in the age of AI because we are doing it. And that perspective for some P firms or tech companies or hedge funds, they love it. And for others, it's not a good fit.
Mhm.
So like typically a really good client of ours is somebody who understands how important cultural adoption is of AI, understands that there's a transition now where everybody can be a builder and can like automate themselves or scale themselves. And because that's what we do, but what we find is if you don't believe those things, you're typically like not going to like our approach.
And this approach, and you just touched on an example from the private equity firm, starts with understanding how the organization is using AI. It also seeks to understand within an organization or a part of the organization, what does a day look like? What does someone's, kind of process look like? Like, where are there opportunities to apply this technology as a solution? And then that, I assume, services a bunch of ideas. You then narrow this down to a number that you build solutions to. Is that a typical like process? You mentioned in this example of the $40 billion firm that you ended up delivering 20 or 30 products. That sounds like a lot. Sounds like
Right.
great value for them. Is that a typical engagement? Is there a typical engagement?
No, I mean that's a very typical engagement. I mean, we have a pretty productized way of doing this because it works really well, where we go from understanding use cases to delivering a curriculum, but based off of those use cases, to developing these products that you then have indefinitely, and then office hours and the access to every subscription as like more cultural things. So we have a pretty locked down way of doing it that's worked super well. Um, and then occasionally somebody comes to us with like a, wacky problem, and we like solving hard problems. And, 1 out of 10 times we'll say like, yeah, we're up for figuring that out.
Yeah.
But usually we don't do that because we try to, stick to our lane. Um, yeah.
Cool. And then I guess the before case was low adoption, but a feeling like there was a real opportunity here. You deliver these, 20 or 30 products, GPTs, et cetera, against areas like compliance and legal and the investment process. What does the after case look like to give someone a sense, whether it's, I mean, I touched on time saved or dollars saved or adoption levels. What does the after case look like for this PE firm?
Yeah. So, I mean, going from like 5% power users being people that use AI every day, to 50% plus, hundreds, tens of thousands of hours reclaimed from rote sort of drudgery style work to now being automated, millions of dollars in savings. For this PE firm specifically, their KPI was, if we do one deal a month, how can we go to doing 2 or 3 deals a month with
Hmm.
the same level of quality? And that sort of feeds into like typically what we're trying to do. We are trying to help a business scale 2x with the same amount of cost. So we're not trying to like uh we're not really trying to like decrease your costs as a business. We're definitely not like promoting like replace,
Right.
your people. We're trying to say this is going to give you the ability to go capture the next 2x of revenue.
Yeah. And so who's a great fit for you? You mentioned that there are people who are philosophically aligned, people who are less philosophically aligned. Is there like a size or, I don't know, scale of a private equity firm or hedge fund or a investment management company that is a good fit for every?
Yeah. So typically we're working with organizations that are 100 people plus in size. And that has like proven to be a sweet spot for us. In terms of revenue, that or like AUM, that's been across the board. We worked with, firms that are 100 billion, and hedge funds that are 7 billion, and startups or tech companies that are doing 20 million. So it really runs the gamut. It's really like a number of people that
Hmm.
has proven to be like really successful. So, I think our sweet spot is like 100 plus, but we have clients that have thousands of employees and clients that have 20. So it really is, I think that the most important thing is, do you believe that AI, there's a huge opportunity for you to 2x the size of your business with the same amount of people? And is your team doing that? And if the answer is no, but you want them to, we are a good partner for you to help them get there.
Awesome. Brandon, I really appreciate you coming by. Just curious and really excited to see what you and Dan and the rest of the team are building at Every.
Yeah. Thanks so much, Ben.